going like Manasvi and Prashant are going live.
Yeah.
Aru, you can take.
Okay, am I audible? Just a quick check from Arohi, because I
You're
wasn't able to
audible.
hear you, Arohi.
Yeah, I think there was some issue from Aru's end, but you're audible, so I think.
Hello.
Yeah. Now it's all. Yeah, now Aru is also audible. So we just start with like a quick.
Okay,
Perfect.
yeah,
Let
I
me.
think there was a technical glitch. I'll begin again. So, good afternoon, everybody. I am Arohi Anyal, and I welcome you all to the Empower session brought to you by the Placement Unit Consulting Committee here at BIT. Today's session shall provide insights into the consulting industry and how to prepare for a consulting interview. You shall learn about how consulting interviews work and what you can expect to see during this placement cycle. I'm glad to introduce you to today's speakers, Manasvi Singh and Akash Shankar. Manasvi is currently placed at BCG. Manasvi will be on campus next semester and is currently interning with GamesKraft. Akash graduated with a mechanical engineering degree and is currently working as an associate at BCG. I welcome you both. So, without further ado, let's begin the session. I request Akash and Manasvi to take over.
Thank you so much, Arohi. Thank you for that great introduction. Let me just quickly present my screen that we can start. Could one of you just confirm that you can see my screen?
Yeah, it's visible. Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you for that great introduction, and thanks all of you for being here on a Saturday evening. I remember sitting for these talks back in my second year and third year, and they were super helpful for me, right? So I hope we can provide some sort of knowledge to you guys, and you can take something home from this session as well. This is just a quick introduction. I think that's already done. So let's start. So what is this talk about, right? This talk is about an introduction to consulting. We'll give you an insight on the life in consulting. We'll be talking about the opportunities available to undergraduates like you. We'll be talking about building a profile, how to build your resume, right? Especially from a Bitsian perspective. We'll be doing a quick mock case interview. So you'll get an idea about how an interview is done and how a case is actually solved, right? Quickly, just to give you an idea about what this is not about, we're not going to be going into the details of case solving. This is not a workshop, right? So there will be more sessions on that later, but this is not a workshop. Second is why MBA? Even I don't know why MBA. So don't ask me why MBA. You can probably ask how will consulting help you with MBA, but yeah, don't straight up ask questions about MBA, right? And third is consulting versus product management versus civil services or other career options. Definitely don't ask these questions because we definitely don't know. At least I have no product management experience. So yeah, we would not be the right people to compare industries, right? So that's what this is not about. Feel free to drop in any questions in the chat. We'll be taking up all questions later at the end. right? So you can ask your questions while the talk is going on, or you can ask it right at the end, right? No problem. And we'd be happy to take up all kinds of questions. So yeah, moving on. An introduction to the industry. What is consulting? I would have asked you guys to put it in the chat as to what you guys think consulting is, but unfortunately I can't see what you guys are putting in the chat. So I'll just quickly move on to the next slide. What is consulting? At its heart, consulting is helping clients to do things better, differently, and to achieve their objectives. All right. In a nutshell, consulting is providing any sort of advisory services to your clients, right? And these advisory services could be in any domain, right? So you have engineering consulting, for example, where you provide technical knowledge, right? On, let's say, mechanical engineering or civil engineering knowledge. You have IT consulting, where you provide advisory services on IT implementation and stuff like that. You have policy consulting. And finally, you do have management consulting, which is what we are going to talk about here, right? So consulting in general, when you refer, when they say consulting, they usually refer to management consulting, right? And management consulting is the practice of helping clients improve their performance by solving their business problems. The key word here being business problems, right? So we focus on all sorts of business problems. Now, over here, they've mentioned some problems that consultants solve, right? So you have business growth, you have long-term strategy, cost optimization, could be a product launch, could be a market entry, digital analytics transformation, all sorts of problems, right, that are solved under management consulting. Here's some real-life examples. Super interesting. The conception and development of the barcode that you see in your supermarkets was actually done by a consulting firm. We have also helped, consulting firms have also helped IPL teams in their auction strategy. They've also helped the Tokyo Olympics with their tourism revenue strategy, right? So some really interesting, really cool business problems that we solve for clients, right? At the end, we have the roles. Now, many firms have different names for these roles. So the names that we have here are probably specific to, I believe, McKinsey and probably Kearney, some other firms. So as an undergraduate, you join at the business analyst level, right? You get promoted from there to a junior associate, which is basically the MBA higher. From a junior associate, you become a senior associate. Then you become an engagement manager. At an engagement manager level, you handle an entire project. And from engagement manager, you go to associate partner, partner, and then senior partner, right? At BCG, it's slightly different. The business analyst role is called associate. And from associate, you get promoted to senior associate, which is the MBA higher. And from senior associate, you get promoted to consultant. And then from consultant, you go to project leader. So project leader is the same as engagement manager. And after that, it's the same thing, right? So different nomenclature, different firms use different nomenclature, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing, right? So that's a bit about consulting. Here are the consulting opportunities, right, for undergraduates in India. What kind of firms exist that you can try for? There's obviously tier 1, MBB. It's called MBB. MBB stands for McKinsey, BCG, and Bain, right? These are the top 3 consulting firms, you can say even globally. Then you have your prestigious global tier 2 consulting firms. You have Kearney, Oliver Wyman, LEK Consulting, and even Parthenon. You have your global boutique consulting firms, Accenture Strategy, Roland Berger, Dahlberg, Alvarez and Marshall, ZS Associates. You obviously have your big 4 consulting as well, Deloitte, PwC, EY, KPMG. You have some Indian firms as well, right? Some local Indian firms, Octus Advisors, Goodera, New Sigma, Indus Insights, right? So you can have a look at all these kinds of firms. This is where opportunities exist for undergraduates in the country, right? So moving on, why join consulting, right? Now, this is the big question. Why should you join consulting? You joined BITS Pilani as an engineer. Why should you leave engineering and get into consulting, right? Consulting is super attractive for 2 major reasons, right? One is the unique and steep learning curve that it has. And the second is the lucrative exit options, right? Now, the learning curve, the steep learning curve that you have is probably due to 3 main reasons, right? One over here, as explained, is cross-industry exposure, all right? You have a wide variety of projects and you work across different kinds of industries. consulting firms work with healthcare firms, they work with finance firms, they work with consumer goods, they work with aviation, they work with startups, all kinds of companies, right? And all kinds of industries. So you get a flavor of different industries right out of undergraduate, right? Which I don't think any other job sort of gives you. Further, your projects are usually around 6 to 9 months. So within 2 years, you probably get 3 different industries, right? 3 different projects in 3 different industries. So that way, it's a very steep learning curve. The second is senior management exposure, right? This is one beautiful thing about consulting. Right as an undergraduate, you get to interact with CXO level positions, right? In case team meetings and steering committee meetings, you can be talking directly to the CEO of, let's say, a Fortune 500 company, right? You could be advising on what his company should do. That's why it's so impactful. And I don't think any other job gives you the pleasure of speaking to, let's say, a CXO right out of undergraduate, right? So that's another really attractive thing in consulting. And finally, it's the kind of people, right? Consulting firms recruit creme de la creme, right? From all the universities across the country. So the kind of people you're with itself are really smart, and they really push you to become a better version of yourself, right? So all of these 3 factors sort of contribute to the unique and steep learning curve. And finally are the lucrative exit options, right? I'm sure you would have heard of it. From consulting, you can probably exit into anything, right? Some popular options are business schools. Many consultants in McKinsey, BCG, Bain have exited to Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, INSEAD, HEC Paris, you name it, right? M7. You can exit into product management roles. Many have exited into companies like Amazon, Cred, Meesho, Flipkart, right? And finally, even private equity and venture capital is also a very interesting area that people exit into. Sequoia, Blackstone Group, Accel, right? These are some really big firms that you can exit into from consulting, right? So again, it's not limited to these. You can exit into anything. I've seen people exit into social impact. I've seen people exit into strategy roles in startups, right? Reporting directly to the CEO. I've seen people start their own startups. So the exit options are, let's say, limitless. That's the beauty of consulting. So that's what is in consulting for you. Moving on to the next part, a day in the life of a consultant. I don't know how many of you have YouTubed or Googled on YouTube a day in the life of a consultant. They show some cool videos about them traveling around. And in fact, that is true. So flights, long nights, client meetings, and free food, all very, very true, right? So usually what happens is on a Monday, you fly to the client location, check into a hotel, have a team check-in, and you set the agenda for the week, right? And you'll have a meeting with, let's say, the project leader just to align and to ensure that all of you are on the same page for the upcoming week. On Tuesday, you'll come up with some new analysis, some new hypotheses, right? And for that new hypothesis, you'll build some models along with the data scientist or let's say somebody from the client side, right? For the upcoming steering committee meeting. Just so that this is not too jargony, steering committee meeting is basically a meeting where all the case team leadership from the consulting firm side and the client side all come together, and there's sort of an exchange of information. Right? That's what a steering committee meeting is. Now, on Wednesday, you may have some problem-solving sessions with the team. You may bounce your ideas off other team members. You may have to do some expert calls, right, with experts based out of anywhere, right, in whatever industry you are. And then Thursday, you'll have to make some final edits to your document, final edits to your PPT before the steering committee meeting. And on Thursday evening, you'll probably have a steering committee meeting with the entire team and with the client leadership, right? That could be on a Thursday or even a Friday. Friday, you'll probably have dinner with the clients. That's customary usually. You'll have a final ideation meeting to discuss the way forward for the next week and the upcoming months. And then hopefully you get to fly back home on Friday evening at a good time, reach home at a good time, and you have a peaceful weekend, right? So that's the typical life. It is long hours, but it's also a lot of free stuff. So yeah, very, very attractive as an undergraduate. Bitscians in consulting. So these are some people. We recently changed the slide. I remember when the slide was there before. There were people from the 2015 batch and all that. So right now, I hope some of you recognize these people. Harshaman Sinha, Sanskriti, both of these were 2 years senior to me. Harshaman is in McKinsey. He's still at McKinsey right now. He just got promoted to junior associate. Sanskriti, she was at McKinsey for 2 years. She exited into Axel Partners right now, which is a venture capital firm for those of you who don't know. And then the Siddhant Dang. Siddhant Dang, he was at BCG, then he went to Axel for 2 years. And after Axel, right now, he just joined Wharton for an MBA class of 2024, right? So as you can see, a lot of Bitsians have gone into consulting, and a lot of Bitsians have done crazy things after consulting as well. To give you some more examples, Niharika, she's, I believe, in Siddhant Dang's batch. She worked in consulting for 4 years, has now exited to Chicago Booth for an MBA. There's also Prithvi Raj, for example. He spent 2 years at BCG, and now he exited into a product role at Meesho, right? So you can do anything under the sun after consulting. And these are just some examples of Bitsians who you may know, who have done some cool stuff. Right, okay, profile building. What do consulting firms look for in a candidate, right? This is the main question. So there are 4 things, right? So for those of you who don't know, most of you apply with your resume, right? And there is a first round of shortlisting that happens with your resume. Usually there are about, 400 odd applicants from both Goa and Pilani together. And from those 400, they probably shortlisted down to, let's say 20-30 people just based on resume, right? So your resume has to be top notch, right? It has to be absolutely perfect. And after that resume shortlist, those 20-30 people will probably be given some time to prepare, and then there'll be case interviews, right? Now let's look at the resume, because this is such an important part. There are 4 aspects that consulting firms look for in resume, right? One is your academics. Second is your work experience. Third is your positions of responsibility. And fourth are your extracurricular achievements, right? Now, as you can see, academics include CGPA, publications, PORs includes, whatever organizations you've been on campus. Could be some department, could be some club, could be some consulting club, anything like that, right? Work experience includes all kinds of internships, summer, winter, whatever, all kinds of internships over there. And finally, extracurriculars could include any competitions you've participated in, any sports, debating, dance, music, right? Things like that. Now, what consulting firms want is they want you to be good across all of these 4, right? They want you to be well-rounded and have a good profile across all these 4 aspects, right? Now, apart from being good across all these 4, you need to have something called a spike, all right, in at least 2 of them. Now, what is a spike? A spike is basically something that is a little exceptional over the rest, right? So for example, let's say in academics, you have a 9+ CG and you have, let's say you've done 1 or 2 publications, right? Some papers. That's a spike. That's a clear spike, right? So like that, you need at least 2 spikes or at least 1 super high spike for you to get shortlisted, right? And apart from that spike, you need to be good across all 4 of them. So if we come to the next slide, these are just some examples of the kind of internships, PORs, and academics that some people had. Harshaman, we've highlighted the exceptional spikes in blue. So for example, Harshaman, his internships were good, his PORs were good, his CGPA was 9.5, right? So his academics was a super big spike. That's how he got shortlisted. As you can see, my internships was a spike for me. I had 3 good internships. My PORs were a spike. I had some really good I had 3 good PORs on campus as well. And my academics was also all right. I had a CGPA of 8.66, right? Smriti Prakash, she had some excellent internships, excellent PORs as well. Those were her spikes. Hari, again, his academics were actually a spike. So he had an 8.52 CGPA, but apart from that CGPA, he had around 6 or 7 papers that he had published, right? And that as an undergraduate is exceptional. So his academics were a big spike for him. And he also had some excellent internships, as you can see, at London Business School, Adani Power, and he had some good PORs as well, Campus Senator, Inspired Carters, right? Pranaydeep. Now here's an example. Many people come and ask me, my CGPA is not high. Can I still make it? Yes, you can make it, right? Now, consulting, they do look at your CGPA a lot. You do have to have a good CGPA. But sometimes you can offset for a bad CGPA with exceptional spikes in other areas, right? So Pranaydeep's a very typical case. So he had a CGPA below 7.5, but he interned at some excellent firms. He's interned at Everstone, he's interned at INSEAD, he's interned at Kearney, he interned at Alvarez and Marshall as well. He also interned at, I think, Front Row. So he had excellent internships, right? And that sort of set him apart from the rest. So that's how he made it into the shortlist as well. And his PORs were also excellent. Again, Digvijay here has excellent internships and good PORs, right? So this is just some examples of people who made it into the shortlist, just to give you an idea of what kind of profiles get in and what exactly spikes are, right? So hope that gives you a good idea. Crafting the resume, right? So now you know what the sections are. You have academics, PORs, internships, and extracurriculars. But how do I get into the finer details, right? How do I actually present it in the best possible way? So there are a few common do's and don'ts, right, that you have to do. One good thing is you have to use the PU template, so you can't really go away from that template. So वही template के साथ you have to make your resume. So it's standard. Coming to the do's and don'ts, focus more on impact and less on activity, right? Now, this is very important. Most of you, when you make your first resume, you'll focus more on the activity rather than the impact. Focus on the result, right? So for example, let's say you were in the Department of Sponsorship, right? And let's say you made over 100 calls to different companies to get sponsorship. Don't focus on that aspect. Don't focus on the fact that you made 100 calls. वो 100 calls से क्या हुआ, right? What happened with that? Did you convert 0? You probably converted 0, which is not good, right? Or did you convert, let's say 50, which is excellent, right? So you have to mention how many did you convert, or let's say mention how much sponsorship did you raise, right? So I raised X amount by doing this many calls, right? So focus a lot on your impact and less on your activity. Demonstrate balance across multiple areas and highlight distinctiveness. Like I said, you need to be well-rounded across all of the areas, right? So ensure that you give different flavors across your resume and highlight whatever impact or distinctive point that you have, right? Let's say you had a startup or something like that, then highlight that area properly. Avoid multiple points that convey the same message. This goes without saying. Please don't mention 2 points that talk about the same thing, right? That is just repetitive. Demonstrate consistent upward trajectory across time wherever possible. This, if possible, do it. It will naturally happen anyways. Your internships and your PORs will gradually get better as time progresses, right? You obviously can't get, let's say, a Kearney internship in your first year, right? So show that you've improved over time, right? And finally, keep it crisp. Very, very, very important. All right, you need to understand that it is going to be another human being who's reading your resume on the other side of it, right? So you don't want them to get bored. You don't want them to give a story. You don't want them to, just pass your resume on like, I'm bored. Let's not see this. So keep it crisp, keep it to the point, engage them, right? So don't write long paragraphs, avoid long paragraphs at all costs. And, don't go into too much jargon, right? This is another big mistake that many people do, especially people from the CS background. They talk a lot about Python and Java, and they talk about different kind of things that they did. Like nobody understands that. Someone from the core background will definitely not understand that, right? So a good practice is to run your resume by someone who's not from your branch, and then also run it by someone who's not from engineering altogether, right? And they should be able to understand your resume. So there should be no jargon at all, right? Coming to the don'ts, don't exceed 1 page. Your resume should be a 1-pager only. Don't misinterpret facts. Super, super important. I cannot stress on this. Do not lie on your resume, all right? You will be caught, all right? You will definitely be caught. These guys aren't stupid. You can't fool them. Do not lie on your resume, okay? Don't experiment with fonts. Don't do some fancy fonts. Only use Times New Roman, font size 8-9. Again, this is standard PU, so you won't really be able to experiment with it too much. So stick to the general format, PU format, right? Don't have spelling or grammatical errors. That's very, very important. Once you're finished with the content of your resume, just brush through your resume to see if there are any grammatical errors, right? Super important. Don't indulge in storytelling. Again, like I said before, don't write long paragraphs. Keep it to the point. Keep them engaged, right? You wanna make them interested in you, right? Finally, don't make generic statements, right? Like don't tell spawns raised X amount, right? Like spawns raised karne se kya ho gaya? Like what did you do, right? Let's say spawns raised 15 lakhs. How much did you raise, right? So be specific with what you did. Don't give generic statements. And last point is try not to exceed one line per point, right? So one point should try ideally to keep it within one line, right? So these are some common do's and don'ts. Common error. So I'll give you a bit of explanation on what I mean by give context and what I mean by demonstrate personal impact. Right? I kept saying show impact, show impact. So coming to give context. Now, for example, your internships or your PORs, right? Try to mention what exactly the company or the organization does, right? Now, for an internship, you may have interned at some startup, right? Which may not be that well known. So the person who's reading your resume may not know what that startup does. So giving a one-liner, just explaining what the startup does or what the company does or how big the company is, right, is very useful. And like it's mentioned here, it's primarily needed for internships at lesser-known startups and definitely positions at college bodies, right? Because let's say I'm talking about the Department of Sponsorship and Marketing. Someone sitting in BCG or let's say any consulting firm may have no idea what exactly they do, right? So just giving an idea as to, you know, they raise sponsorship for so-and-so fest, blah, blah, blah. Just giving an idea like that is very useful, right? Another example, let's say you have an award or an achievement, right? Let's say some competition where you won, all right? Now, just writing ranked 1 in XYZ competition, all right, is completely useless, all right? Did that competition have 10 people? Did that competition have 100 people? Was that competition global? Right? No idea. The reader has no idea. So always mentioning ranked X out of X participants or X applicants is always useful, right? So that's what I mean by giving context. Second comes demonstrating personal impact, right? So what exactly does personal impact mean? What did you do? Not what your team/division did, right? So like I said, let's say Spawns raised 15 lakhs for a fest, right? I'm not going to write Spawns raised 15 lakhs for a fest. I'm going to write I raised 3 lakhs out of the 15 lakhs raised by Spawns or something like that, right? This shows what personal impact you had, right? As you can see that there's a form, your overall impact is team impact into percentage contribution, right? So talk about your percentage contribution, right? Tell how much you contributed to the actual overall impact. Finally, last is what impact did your work have, right? Quantify your impact wherever possible. This is super, super important. Again, many people, when they make their first resumes, they don't really quantify their impact, right? So always try to quantify the impact, you know, probably improved revenues by X%, increased sponsorship amount by X%, or improve the efficiency by, let's say, this much, anything like that, right? Quantifying the impact is always useful, right? Now, there are two techniques to quantify your impact, all right? One is impact first, and the next is star. Now, I will talk about both of these methods. The basic difference is in impact first, all your points will have the result or the impact that you've generated first, and then the action that you did that led to that impact second, all right? So you'll be talking about first the impact and then the action. In star format, it's reverse. All right. First, you'll be talking about the action, and then at the end of the point, your result will come out. So the next slide, we'll see about impact first, right? So here's an example of an impact first model, right? So the initial draft, these are actual points from resumes, by the way. So on the first draft, it was worked with sales team to increase usage of Microsoft Teams amongst a set of clients. As you can see, very general, doesn't depict impact at all. I have no idea kitna impact kiya hai, right? How hard was this job, right? So now if you can see the impact first point that is written here, increased monthly client engagement on Teams by 5% by integrating 4 LOB applications into the product, right? Now over here, the impact was increased monthly client engagement on Teams by 5%, right? And it's quantified 5%, right? So definitely do that. The impact is first, and then comes the action. What did you do to generate that impact, right? And the action over here was integrating 4 LOB applications into the product, right? Another example, the first draft was onboarded national media houses as first-time partners to increase reach of the conclave, right? This looks like some CEL wala point, right? So again, this seems very generic, have no idea what is the kind of impact actually being generated, right? Now, an impact first point would be increased reach by 26% year over year by engaging the country's 5 biggest media houses as partners for the conclave. Again, the impact over here is increased reach by 26%, and the action is by engaging the country's 5 biggest media houses, right? So first came impact, then came action, right? Now let's look at STAR, right? STAR is the opposite, where your action will come first and then your impact comes second, right? So these are from my resume, in fact. The first draft in example 1 working on site on a 25 crore layout restructuring project and reporting directly to the head of manufacturing India division. Again, not very impactful. I'm just talking about what I'm working for, right? Not really about mera work ka result kya hua, right? So if you see the STAR format of the same point, developing a framework as part of an INR 25 crore layout restructuring project, expected to cut cycle time in half and reduce labor by 33%, right? So over here, the action, which is developing a framework, comes first, and then the result, which is cut cycle time in half and cut labor by 33%, comes second, right? Again, like I said, it's mainly revolving around action and result, but actually STAR stands for situation, task, action, result, right? Basically, our action comes before result. Either situation and task is, it was part of a 25 crore layout restructuring project, right? But again, you don't need to pay too much attention to the S and T. The main part is the A and R, right? Action and result. In the STAR format, the action comes before result. Next example, the initial draft was worked on quality control by carrying out leak tests and other engine tests on 4-stroke single-cylinder motorbike engines. Again, this is very jargony, right? Probably someone from core engineering would know what leak tests are, but let's say somebody from IT or somebody from a non-engineering background would have no idea what leak tests are, right? So I rephrased this point in STAR format, and the point was diagnose runtime performance issues and perform static engine tests to, I think there's a 2 missing there, to establish the structural integrity of 24-stroke engines, right? So the action was first over here, which is performed static engine tests. And the result was to establish the structural stability. I established the structural stability of structural integrity of 24-stroke single-cylinder engines, right? So that's the basic difference between impact first and STAR. Pick one and stick to it throughout your resume, all right? Don't do some points in impact first and then some points in STAR. Pick one, whichever you're comfortable with, and do your whole resume in that format, all right? The reason why we ask you to do this is because usually people highlight the result, all right? They bold the result part of their point, all right? Now, if you follow impact first format, then all your boldings will be on the left side of your resume, all right? If you follow STAR format, then all your boldings will be on the right side, right? So basically, if someone wants to quickly go through your resume and just read the impact, then they can just quickly look at the boldings on one side, right? Either the left or the right. It just looks neat, right? So pick one, either impact first or STAR, and stick to it, all right? Personally, I picked STAR. Yeah, so preparing for the case interview, super important. Now, introduction to the case interview. What is a case, right? A case is an open-ended question. There are different kinds of cases that we have. There's guesstimates, profitability, market entry, growth, and unconventional, right? Now, so a case is basically a simulation of an actual problem that you may face in consulting, right? So they're basically trying to condense it down and try to see if you can solve it within, let's say, 30, 45 minutes, right? Now, a guesstimate, you may have heard of a guesstimate. You basically have to try to guess with some analysis, try to guess the number of something. So let's say the number of light bulbs bought in India per year, right? Or let's say the number of balls that can fit into an Airbus A380. Right? These are the kinds of guesstimates that you get. Second is a profitability question. Profitability questions are usually surrounded around companies that are facing issues with profitability, right? So either the costs increase or the revenues have gone down, right? Due to which there's a profitability issue, right? That is under profitability cases. Finally comes market entry. Market entry is, let's say the company is entering a new market, creating a new product, or entering a new geography, right? Those are usually market entry cases. Growth is not usually for undergraduate levels, all right? Growth, mergers and acquisitions, and pricing are usually for MBA higher level. So at an undergraduate level, you might not get growth. Just look through it so that you get an idea. And finally comes unconventional, right? Unconventional cases are the most deadly. Anything under the sun can come under unconventional, right? The questions could be anything like, you have woken up in the middle of a forest. What do you do, right? So the questions are that open-ended, right? What these cases are trying to test is your analytical and structuring ability, right? Whether you're able to structure and break down a problem into its constituents. Now, how to solve a case? Like I said, what they expect you to do is to break down the big problem into various sub-problems, right? So to break down into these sub-problems, you have some basic frameworks, all right? Which you can look at some case books. You'll be able to understand what these frameworks are. You'll also need to structure and segment wherever possible, all right? The three subpoints here, one is be MECE, right? MECE stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, right? What it means is if you're going to split one point into, let's say, 4 different areas that you need to look into, each of those 4 different buckets should be mutually exclusive. That means they shouldn't overlap each other. And together, they should solve for that one bucket, right? That main bucket that you've split down. So that's what being MECE means. Second is always use the 80-20 rule, right? This is the Pareto principle. Basically means that 80% of your outputs are usually driven by 20% of your input, right? So figure out what is that 20% and focus on that, right? What is causing 80% of the problem and focus on that, right? Now, finally, drill down. Wherever you find that, there is an issue, drill down further and try to figure out what the problem is, right? So that's a basic introduction to what a case is and how you're actually supposed to solve a case interview. For preparation, I think Manasvi will take you through this because she's had this very recently, so she'll have a better idea. Manasvi, you want to take over?
Yeah. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. So I'll cover 2 parts. First is what the timeline looks like, and then moving on to what does your personal timeline should look like or how you prepare. So overall, the process starts with when there's an announcement. Usually there's a Google form or maybe updated on the superset wherein there'll be an announcement and you'll be called for resumes, right? After that, you'll have a general resume building session that is usually hosted by the company itself. So it's usually on a weekend wherein they'll take 1 or 2 hours and do a much deeper dive into what Akash just did for you guys. They'll give a lot of pointers. While they might not be very specific, but it's a good practice to attend all of those sessions just as a sanity check that, you're ticking all of those points. And then comes in the deadline for resume submission, which is usually a day or 2 after this resume building session. So I'd suggest not to wait for this session to happen. You start working on your resume as soon as you feel you're comfortable because you won't have a lot of time at the end. Finally, after a week or so, the shortlists are announced. And as Akash mentioned, there are like some 300, 400 submissions and you get 30 shortlists. For instance, BCG this year had, I think, 28 shortlists, 18 of which were from our campus and 10 from Goa. So the process is really stringent over here. So regardless of how brilliant your interview is, if your resume does not make it through the shortlist, it doesn't make sense. That is why you really need to start preparing your resume right from the start. Then you have your buddies assigned. So buddies are basically people who are at BCG. Usually they are with Salems only. So you'll have 2 buddies assigned, and these are the people who are going to help you throughout your preparation process. They're going to give you mock cases, any questions, anything that you want to ask, they're here for you. And then you usually, a few days before your interview dates are announced, you have a life at the consulting company kind of session wherein you get to interact with a lot of people from BCG, from whatever company that you're sitting for. They'll just give you a brief on what this looks like. pretty much like this session, but like specifically for that company. And that is also a place wherein you get to directly interact with the people and ask as many questions as you want. That's usually encouraged. And then finally comes the interview day. So it's usually like a 1 day long process. You start your day at 8 a.m. and for us, it went till 7 p.m. when finally the results were announced. Now, this is very varied for every single person involved. Some people might have 1 round, some people might have 5. And that doesn't, again, determine if you're getting selected or not. I know people who got rejected after doing 4 rounds, and I know people who got in after 2 rounds itself. But like there's a broad structure to it, which is usually followed. Again, no strict guidelines. Usually for BCG, that is the process which I sat for. We had first the PPL rounds, that is basically your principal and project leader. And then you have your lunch when the eliminations come out. So our time, 5 people got eliminated after their initial PPL rounds. Again, varied number of PPL rounds. Some people had 1, some people had 2. And then finally comes in your MDP rounds, managing director and partner. Again, these are varied. Some people had, like in my time, maximum was 1. Some people just had 1 PPL and 1 MDP round. So it's a lot of variance over there. And then finally are the results. So for us, it was announced. It was not announced publicly. We got a call, and that is how we got to know about our results. So this is the broad timeline that is followed. Of course, I only sat for BCG, so that's what my experience is based on. It might vary slightly depending upon which company you're sitting for. Now, coming to how do I prepare, this is again the general timeline. First is your resume draft. It usually starts a month or 2 before, because that is when you're sitting for your summer intern. So you end up preparing a lot for your resumes. Now it is okay to make as many drafts as you can. Every single person is going to give you 1 more suggestion, and you have to incorporate it. Try to send it to as many people as possible. Different views not only helps you identify all of the small little mistakes, also ensures if it's readable or not. Because as Akash mentioned, send it to non-technical folks, because you incorporate a lot of jargon. Send it to non-Bitsians as well, so that you know that you're not including a very common Bitsian lingo either. Right? So I sent it, I remember, to 15 different people, sent it again and again after every single thing, and incorporate that feedback. It gets frustrating. It's annoying, but you have to do it. Superset, there are a lot of tricks and tips that you have to learn, and then you have to ensure that your resume looks clean. That is the biggest thing that you're targeting for. When you look at it, it should look clean. If it looks ugly, no matter how well of a formatting you've done, no matter how beautifully it's written, if it's looking ugly, they're not going to look at it. Now, then comes the third step, is your case prep material. So after you're done with your resume, after you're fully satisfied and you've submitted it, then you start gathering your case prep material. We have linked a few of the case books that we felt were very good, that both of us followed at the end of this presentation, which will be shared. So it is recommended that you create a full folder of all of the case books that you're ever going to use, all of the frameworks that you can find, YouTube links, everything right there. And then comes in the case group. I think this forms like 90% of your case prep, because these are the people from your batch who are also sitting for the process that you're going to spend a lot of time with in the coming days. These are also going to be other shortlists. So the way you prepare for a case is not by reading it, is not by watching YouTube videos, but by actually doing it, because there is literally no other way you can get good at it. So you're going to have only a few buddy cases. In a brilliant case, you might have 6, 7, 8 cases. In some cases, in case your buddy isn't as available or your timings don't match, you might not have as many. Seniors also might not be available, which means you really need to drill down on your case group. So just a few things to keep in mind while selecting your case group. 1, they need to have the same level of drive, because if there is a mismatch, one of you is going to get frustrated. So ensure that these are people you know have similar level of drive. 2 is your feedback. Do these people give you good feedback? Because if you're doing a case prep with someone who cannot give you good feedback, that is as good as not doing a case, because you don't realize what your mistakes are. And just practicing the wrong thing is also not something that is recommended, right? So these are the 2 things. And third, suggested is try to make a timeline and stick to it. Try to fix one time of the day wherein we'll get together, do cases, And however you want to strategize for it, that's totally dependent upon you. And maybe there'll be like further sessions, but for the purpose of this session, I think these are a few tips to keep in mind. Next comes in your buddy and seniors. Now, usually an entire batch is pretty much at the same level. So the kind of feedback you get, the kind of mistakes you make, the kind of good things you do get circulated, and everyone in the end is doing the same thing. So to ensure that you are not repeating the same mistakes as everyone else in your batch, you have your buddies and seniors. Reach out to people, reach out to seniors, try to do as many cases as you can with them, incorporate their feedback, and finally comes in tracking your progress. So one thing you're going to find is same feedback comes in over and over and over again. Now you have good feedback, you have good process, but if you're not incorporating that feedback into your process, it makes no sense again. So keep a track of the kind of feedback you're getting. And if there is something that is, very repetitive, everyone is telling you this same thing, that is the thing that you need to focus on, because you might not realize it, but if everyone is saying the same thing, do think twice about it, right? Not necessarily incorporate it, but do think twice about it, and then it's your call. I think that's pretty much from my end. Akash, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just a quick add-on to that last point, right? Guys, it's super important to track your progress, right? I've seen many people, they're like, मेरे को 50 case करना है. I have to do 50 cases before my case interviews. I have to do 60 cases before my case interviews, right? And they just do like cases without actually, spending quality time with the case, actually figuring out where they went wrong, actually seeing what the other ways of solving are, right? So this is super important. Don't go with this mindset कि मेरे को इतना cases complete करना है. There is no right answer of how many cases you should finish before your case interview, right? Some people can do just 15 and they'll be comfortable. Some people have to do 60 and they'll be comfortable, right? So you need to figure out where you're comfortable, all right? And how many cases do you need to do before you are satisfied with your preparation and you know that whichever case is thrown at you, you can solve, right? So take quality time with the case, track your progress, write down what mistakes you're making, try to see if you're making those same mistakes again, right? Look back at some previous cases, nothing wrong with that, all right? Good practices, okay? So yeah, moving on.
Right. So the actual interview. Now, a lot of things that one major thing that you guys will realize is that you do your mock cases very differently from what the actual interview looks like. I have seen a lot of people who will do their mock interview not giving proper answers, not framing their sentences properly, and then on the final day, the thing that they get stuck at is framing sentences. So treat your mock interviews exactly as if it's an interviewer. It doesn't matter if it's the person you're going to go to the rally with 10 minutes later, right? Treat it like an actual interview. Now, on the day of the interview, while you prepare for the cases, you don't know what you're going to get. You might have a interview wherein they don't bring in an actual case, wherein they're just talking to you. They're just talking to you about your resume. So the three major things that you can expect is about your resume. You should be very thorough about every single point that you have mentioned in your resume. So a good practice maybe is what I did is I took every single snippet of my resume and I wrote everything down. Okay, this is what I'm going to highlight, because your resume is short. So I made a Word doc, wrote everything down that, okay, if this comes in, I'm going to highlight this. Next is fit questions. These are not something that you can really prepare for, right? So these are just general interactions. The person might ask you, Acha, why do you want to get into consulting? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Describe this, describe that. They are very random questions. You can't prepare for them. So, but this is something that you can expect in the interview. Don't get like thrown off your game if they give you a random question, right? And then the final is the actual case, of course, which will be like 99% of your overall prep time. So now coming to case prep versus actual interview. Again, now communication is the key. This is the point which I was highlighting, that a lot of people don't prioritize it. They think, okay, I can just like think in a word, ki, haan, ye bolna hai. That's it. That's not how you do it. You need to give like full sentences. However, if you feel that you're fairly confident with framing your sentences and you rather need to focus on your structure, then it is okay. Again, it's your call over here. Second part is they need to be interviewer driven. Again, when you're doing cases with your friend, you tend not to treat it like an actual interview, right? And then you're like just becomes a discussion rather than an actual interview. So let it be exactly in the format as a actual interview would look like. And finally, likability is essential. So while we're doing a lot of thinking, we prepped so much for it, we get frustrated if the interviewer isn't understanding our point. So you need to ensure that at every point of time, you come off as professional. Even if you're getting frustrated, even if the interviewer isn't letting you complete your point, no matter what, you have to come off as professional. You have to come off as likable. Now, other basic tips, be genuine in your interview. Because if you're going to falsify your resume, if you're going to falsify your points, try to come off as someone you're not, they are going to figure it out. They've been doing it for so long, you can't even imagine. And what you did for a month isn't gonna cut through. So you need to be very genuine in your interview. But that doesn't mean that you're not professional. Being genuine does not equate to being unprofessional, right? Finally, is take your fit round very seriously. You must ace your airport test. So airport test, for those who are new to this, is basically, the word came from you spend a lot of time at airports with your colleagues. So are you a very boring person that no one can stand at the airport, or can you be an interesting person to hold a conversation with? That's where the point came from. Again, it's a fit question. Can you hold a conversation? Are you likable? Are you someone who would be a fun person to travel with? That's it. Again, nothing that you can really prepare for, but don't take it lightly. Treat it like a serious interview itself, right? I think that's pretty much that I have. Akash, anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Just to add on to this, guys, just remember at the end of the day, it's another person, all right, sitting across from you who's taking your interview, all right? To case jitna bhi acha kar sakta hai, no matter how well you can solve the case, if that person doesn't like you, then you're not going to get through. Okay? It's as simple as that. So you really need to be likable, all right? Be natural, be genuine. Don't sit up like, hello, sir, and all. You don't need to be that professional. Be casual with the person. Have a good conversation with him. Ask him about his, let's say, the work he's doing, right? He'll also ask you some casual questions. Be natural, all right? Don't come off as someone who's not at all interesting. Okay? That's the end of the day. Just remember, a human being is sitting across from you, all right? You as a human being, would you like to talk to yourself or would you not? That's all, okay? So that's about the interview. I think we've covered a lot of information. Let's quickly do the mock case. Wow, the formatting really went wrong on this slide, but okay. Let's quickly do a mock case. Again, like I said, this is not a workshop, so we won't go through the details and all that. We'll just solve a quick case to give you an idea of how a case actually goes through, right? So in this case, I will be the interviewer, luckily, because I haven't been solving cases for like a year now. And Manasvi will be the interviewee. She'll be solving the case. So yeah, we'll do it that way. So Manasvi, are you ready?
Yeah, we can begin.
Okay, cool. Guys, just quickly before we start, feel free to solve this case along with us, all right? If you have solved some cases in the past and you want to just test yourself as well, feel free to solve this case along with us. We'll be taking pauses in between and all that, so feel free to solve it. Yeah, anyways, so let's start, Manasvi. Yeah, so your client is a confectionery company in India, and they rank amongst the top 3, right? They've seen a decline in profits over the last 2 months. You are required to help them find out what the cause of this problem is and help them turn the situation around.
Got it. So just so that I got you clearly, the client is a confectionery company, which is amongst the top 3 in India. And over the past 2 months, they have seen a decline in their profit. We're supposed to figure out the cause and give recommendations.
That's right.
Okay, I'll quickly take a minute to come up with some clarifying questions then.
Okay, sure. So as you guys noticed, she clarified the question, all right? This is very, very important, all right? Once the interviewer gives you the question, just clarify it once, all right? So that you understand if there's anything that you've missed, any other objectives that you've missed, and if there's any jargon or anything that you don't understand, feel free to ask the interviewer, all right? So this is the time, right after you ask the question, right after he or she asks the question, you should be asking them again if there's any other objectives that you should be looking at.
Right. So my first question is, do we know what is the trend of this decline? Is it a gradual decline or a sudden decline?
It's a sudden decline. Very suddenly, 2 months ago, the profits declined.
Got it. And I would like to know a bit more about our products. What kind of products are we offering? Is it a specific product that saw a decline or a general decline?
So let's assume that we have only one product, and it's like a 1 rupee toffee, right? Like you see your Candymans, right? Like that, it's a 1 rupee toffee, and that's our only product.
Got it. Fair enough. And what about our competitors? Have they been seeing similar decline in profits?
In fact, yes, our competitors have also seen a sharp decline in profits over the last 2 months.
Okay. And one final question before I proceed. Where do we lie in the value chain? Are we just manufacturing or distributing as well?
So we are involved in the manufacturing, and from our manufacturing plant, we distribute to retailers who then either distribute it further to Kirana stores and grocery stores or sell it in their own retail stores.
Got it. Okay, seems fair. I'll quickly take a minute to structure out my case.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so while she solves that, I'll just quickly point out the good things that she did, right? So she asked some very good preliminary questions. You can almost take it as a given that you can ask these preliminary questions, all right? So one is the geography that the client operates in. Manasvi missed that this time, but it's always good to know, which part of the country or globally or internationally does your client operate, right? That is number one, geography. Number two is the product, right? So what are the different products that we have? A bit about the products. Are they differentiable? Are they not differentiable, right? Third is about the competitors. Are our competitors facing the same issue or are they not, right? Fourth is the value chain. What exact portion of the value chain do we lie in? Do we manufacture the product as well, or do we just act like a middleman? Do we just buy the product and then sell it? Do we just act like a middleman? So these four are some very standard questions. Obviously, yeah, the fifth one is also the trend. So like, how has the profits been declining, whether it was a sharp decrease, how much has it declined by, and over how many months has it been declining, right? And the sixth point mentioned here is objective. Objective over here is very clear in the question itself. You have to find out what the problem is and help rectify it. But in some unconventional cases, it is very useful to ask what the objective is, right? So that's what I've mentioned there. So these are some standard questions which you can sort of ask off the bat, very useful to know. And from this, Manasvi will get a good idea she'll at least get an intuition as to where the problem lies. Right? So that's what these preliminary questions are for.
Right. So I'm ready with the structure. Can we proceed?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So as we know that the profits have been declining, which can be taken as a function of revenue less cost. So it's either due to a decrease in our revenue or due to an increase in cost. Which one of the two would you like me to analyze first?
Let's look at costs first.
Okay, seems fair. So now costs again are either our fixed costs like machinery, equipment, salary, etc., or can be variable costs, for example, raw material, production, such costs. So do we know if either of the two costs have seen an increase?
Variable costs have remained the same, and even fixed costs have remained the same. Variable cost per unit has remained the same, and fixed costs have also stayed constant.
Got it. So given that there has been no change in our cost structure, is it fair to assume that the problem lies on the revenue side?
Yeah, I guess that's fair to assume.
Got it. So now moving down the revenue stream, as you mentioned, toffees are our only, like this 1 rupee toffee is the only offering, and we sell it only via one channel, that is our retailers, which then goes into Kirana, retail and grocery store. So understanding that, now either there has to be a decline in the number of those units sold, or there has to be a decline in the price that we're charging per unit. Do we know which one of the two cases has happened here?
Right. So our price has sort of remained constant because we're a 1 rupee toffee manufacturer, right? And that has remained at 1 rupee.
Okay.
The number of units sold seem to have gone down.
Okay, seems fair. So coming down to the number of units sold, now that can be taken as a function of total market size multiplied by our market share. Now, as you had mentioned in the preliminary, in the clarifying questions, that our competitors are also facing a similar decline. Is it fair to assume that the overall market size has gone down?
That's a good insight. So yes, our market share has remained the same, and our competitors' market share has also remained the same. I think the market size itself has gone down.
Okay, fair point. So I would now take a minute to think of a few points as to why this market might be seeing a sudden decline in the past 2 months.
Sure. So again, while she solves that, let's just quickly discuss the good things that she did. She broke down profits really well into revenues and costs. I threw her down costs first. This is a tactic that many interviewers will use. All right, they will throw you down a wrong path just to see if you can figure out that there is no issue there, and you can come out of that and look at the other branch, right? So that's very common. I first threw her down costs. She found out that there was no issue there, and she moved to revenues. She didn't doubt it. She moved to revenues, right? She again split revenues very well as number of units sold multiplied by the price per unit. That totally gives revenues, right? And she found out that the number of units sold went down, right? Again, over here, there's a quick caveat. Over here, the only product that our client was selling was the 1 rupee toffee, right? Let's say they had a variety of products, then Manasvi would have also asked me if there has been a change in the percentage revenue coming from each of the revenue streams, right? So let's say we have two products, product A and product B. Product A is more expensive, all right? Let's say the demand of product A has gone down and demand for product B has gone up, right? This way, the number of units sold may have remained the same and the price also may have remained same. But the fact that we are selling more of our cheaper product and less of our more expensive product, that will automatically reduce our revenues, right? But over here, it was very straightforward. There was only one product, so she didn't ask that question. Then she split number of units sold very well into market and market share. And from the preliminary questions, she already had an intuition that there would be a problem with market and not market share, right? So that's why your preliminary questions are very useful. And when you bring out insights like this, it really impresses the interviewer, right? So now she'll try to break down market further into some different buckets, right? So let's see that.
Right. So I have a total of 4 or 5 factors that might affect the overall market. The first might be some political reason. That is, there is some rally going on or something like that, and due to which there is a shutdown and we can't sell our products. Another reason might be a social change. That is, suddenly people are moving away from toffees, but then again, that is not something that will happen in just 2 months. Thirdly, it might be some legal factor. For example, there is some legal restriction that some food certification is not valid, or some product that some ingredient that we use in our product is not, recommended anymore, or something like that. So do we know if it has been such a broad level change that happened 2 months ago?
No, none of these factors seem to be an issue. All of them seem to have remained the same. Could you take a minute probably and think of some more factors?
Right, definitely. So, looking at specifically the product, it might also be impacted by a complementary or a substituent product. What I mean is that a complement might be something that we consume along with that 1 rupee candy, and that has seen a hit. Or a substituent might be something else that replaces our 1 rupee candy. So, which one of the two would you like me to analyze first?
The complement part seems interesting. Could you mention, let's say, the different kinds of complements that would be there for a 1 rupee toffee?
Sure. I'll take a minute to quickly do that.
Yeah, sure. Right. So while she does that, again, over here, she listed down some factors, all right, some very nice factors, and she explained what she meant in each of them, right? Further, she also gave her insight as to whether she thinks a particular one would be likely or unlikely as a factor, right? So she had mentioned whether customer demand may have gone down for the toffee, right, as one of the factors. But she said that may not be the answer because there was a sudden decrease 2 months ago, right? So that won't be the trend if customers sort of shifted away from the product. It would be more gradual. So she gave her analysis there, which was again very insightful, right? So she's still being exhaustive, but she's still saying that, okay, maybe this is not the issue, right? And then I told her that none of these things are an issue. Could you think a little more, right? So again, don't be taken aback if the interviewer says, you're not right. Can you think of it again? Many people start to panic and think, okay, am I going wrong? And then they start losing it altogether, right? Keep your calm, keep your cool. You may have missed some factors, all right? Just look through your structure again, and you may have missed something. So over here, she clearly missed complement and substitutes, and she finally got it, right? So now let's see what she has to say in complements.
Right. So the way I've analyzed it, stores and all don't have change. They'll give you a 1 rupee toffee. So maybe there.
Okay. So good analysis here, Manasvi. I think I'll give you here. The issue is there was a recent ban on cigarettes that was placed by the government 2 months ago, and cigarettes were placed at a odd price of 18 rupees. And whenever people used to buy it, they used to give $20 bills to the Kirana store or whatever. And usually the Kirana store used to use our toffee as change, right? Which is what you had said. So there is now a sudden ban on cigarettes, due to which people aren't buying cigarettes anymore, and our toffee is not being used as change. So that seems to be the issue over here. Yeah, so I think you've got the main issue. Do you look at some recommendations for our client?
Right. I'll quickly take a minute to think of the recommendations.
Yeah, sure. Again, so she had excellent points over here. She finally got the issue. The interviewer finally told her what the exact problem is. And now she's moving on to the second objective, which is basically coming up with some recommendations to solve the issue for the client. Right? So yeah, let's see what Manasvi comes up with.
Right. So the way I've divided my solutions is short term and long term. Short term is simply we try to eat into others' market share. Given that our market share has stayed constant and the market size has decreased, maybe we can try increasing our market share by doing extensive marketing, by maybe changing the packaging or doing something so that the other revenue streams outside of these cigarette shops increases and we are able to increase our market share. However, that is not sustainable in the longer run. Therefore, there are a few other solutions for the longer run. First is maybe we can try, making a sugar-free candy or maybe a nicotine candy so that this current audience of adults who smoke can also now use a different product, right? Because they're already used to eating our toffees, seeing that brand. So they're already our customers. Maybe we can sell them a new product. An alternative would be to simply expand into other geographies, because given that this ban is specific to our current area, maybe we can look into other states, other countries, and try to get more revenue from there. So overall, these are the three solutions that I would like to recommend.
All right, perfect. Those are excellent solutions, Manasvi. Could you quickly summarize the case for me once?
Sure. So our issue was that our client is a confectionery company, and over the past 2 months, they have seen a sudden decline in their profits. We drilled down to the fact that it is due to a complement, that is cigarette, which was being sold, and our toffees were being sold to round off the number, and the ban has led to a decline in our sales. And overall, we suggested 3 particular solutions into it, a few long-term and a few short-term, and these would lead to an increase in our profits back.
Perfect, Manasvi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akash.
All right, so this was a typical case. This is exactly how a case interview goes. It will be a lot of front and back between the interviewer and the interviewee. So yeah, Manasvi, do you want to just give some quick pointers on how you went through your solution?
Right, I'll quickly cover that.
Yeah.
So if you can move to the first slide, step 1 itself.
This one?
Right, yeah. So as far as the preliminary questions are concerned, this is a very good place for you guys to get started on. But what I have felt over time, as in when you do more cases, you'll realize certain prelim questions that you might want to ask. So it's a good practice to create your own bank of prelim questions and come back to them again and again and see what sticks for you. This is what Akash and I felt were the questions we liked to ask. You might want to ask different questions. So this is just a good place to get started on. A very important point about these prelim questions is you guys need to note it down, because it is annoying for the interviewer if you are asking the same question again and again. Then it just shows that you're not listening to them. So if you have already asked something during the prelim, make sure that you note it down and incorporate it further in the case. For example, over here, I did it with the product. I'd already asked, Acha, we just have one product. So it makes sense that this is the only revenue stream we have, or that our competitors are facing similar decline, so the overall market is impacted. So this not only is a good point for the interviewer, like, okay, you did make that connection, it also annoys the interviewer a bit less, right? Now moving down to the next step. Again, so this is a fairly common structure. Profits are divided into revenue and cost. What a lot of people tend to do is they'll just start with revenue, or they'll just start with cost because they wanted to do so. If you really want to start with a bucket, say that I feel that this is a revenue sided issue because of XYZ reason. And so can I go down the revenue road? Like over here, I had no idea. Maybe an entire cost would have increased for the industry and I would have had to start with the cost side. So that is why if you have an idea, give your reason why and why you would want to start with a particular bucket. Otherwise, just ask which one of the two would you like me to analyze first. And again, if the interviewer throws you off the wrong side, it's totally fine. You can always come back to the profits and then go down the revenue side. It's fair. Like they sometimes do it on purpose. Sometimes you forgot to ask, acha, revenue or cost, and then you went down cost while it was a revenue side problem. So it's okay to come back to profits and start over. Now, right. So again, this is again a checklist that I like to use. You might have a different checklist, a different set of problems. So when you have your case, you'll always have a few levels fixed. You'll always break down profits into revenue and cost. You'll always break down number of units sold into market and market share. But beyond that comes in your own structure, right? I cannot tell you what points to ask. I can only give you a basic line to get started on. And that is why you need to practice more cases, because as in when you do more cases, you'll realize, okay, complement might be a factor. Okay, substituent might be a factor. Pestle is like a fair place for you to get started because it is fairly comprehensive, but then again, isn't always applicable. So Pestle, I'll just clarify, stands for political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors. It's just a thinking framework that covers a broad variety of socioeconomic factors that might impact the market. There might be reasons beyond it. All of these might not be valid. This is just for you to get started, and you have to apply your own like thinking over here. For example, I skipped technological over here. However, if it was an EV based question, electric vehicles, I would have definitely drilled down on the technological reasons. So it's again your call what you're going to use. And then the final slide. Right. So now when you're giving solutions, and I like to use these mini frameworks at different places, because when in the interview in a high stress environment, you're asked to think and you have no framework to fall back upon, no way, like how do I even start thinking about it? These mini frameworks help you out. So this is a matrix that is fairly common everywhere, but I like to use it in solutions that helps me give a diverse set of solutions. So I'll quickly explain. So on the left side of it, you have market, new and old, and on the bottom, you have old and new product. So old market, old product basically means you're drilling down on your existing operations, which is what I suggested. I suggested, let's drill down on our marketing. Let's change the packaging. Very easy to implement. You just drill down on it. But these are usually short-term solutions because this is very capital expensive. You can't always invest a lot of money in marketing. So this is the first solution. Then I gave the suggestion, let's make sugar-free candies, or let's make nicotine-free candies for people who want to quit smoking. So again, we are fairly common amongst smoking population. So they would already have the brand recognition. And they are also highly likely to want to quit sugar, want to quit smoking. So in our old market, we introduce a new product. And then moving into expanding into other geographies is a new market, old product. Fairly common, but gives you a way to differentiate your solution. And then new market, new product. Over here, I did not have any particular thing in it because I did not ask a lot about the company, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses. But if you do know fairly well about the company, you can suggest that, oh, if you're a cinema owner, maybe you can open a shopping mall as well, or vice versa. So that's a new market, new product way to go about it. Again, you don't mention these frameworks to your interviewer. You don't say, I'm going to use the growth matrix or I'm going to use this matrix. It's just something for you to think so that your solutions are diverse. While I do like to mention that I'm going to suggest these in the short term and these in the long term so that we can quickly boost our profits and then sustain it over the long run. That's like a nice little touch, shows that even in your solutions, you're thinking with a structure. You're not just like blurting out the first thing that came to your mind. So again, small little tricks that help you differentiate yourself from everyone else. And that is pretty much the entire case for me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Manasvi. That was a great case. I have forgotten case solving. But anyways, thank you so much for your time, guys. I know me and Manasvi probably gave a lot of gyan and it was a lot to take in. But yeah, feel free to put in any questions in the chat. I think the consulting committee team have already put some questions which we can start answering. So yeah, please put in your questions in the chat, right? And feel free to reach out to us. Our mail IDs are given over here. You can reach out to us on our mail IDs, or you can find us on LinkedIn as well and send us some DMs over there. We'd be happy to help, right? So yeah, let me just go through the questions. Consulting committee, could you post the questions? I think someone deleted the questions.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Thank you so much. We do have a bunch of questions to start. So I'll just jump through.
Your audio is gone again. At least I'm not able to hear you properly right now.
Yeah, I can't hear her.
Hello. Oh, sorry, some network busy. Anyways, we'll jump straight to the questions, right? So the first question is for Akash. Since you have worked at JP Morgan, what is your say about banking versus consulting? And would you say that there is an intersection between investment banking and management consulting?
Good question. So see, investment banking is a very different division. All right, investment banking is very core finance related, and you're helping clients over there with financial work, right? You're helping them with mergers and acquisitions and whatever over there. So that is more finance related. It's a big misconception that consulting equals finance. Very, very wrong. All right. Consulting involves a lot of different things, all right? Like I said, you may work with manufacturing, you may work with the consumer good industry, you may work with an IT client, you may work with healthcare, right? So it's very diverse. Investment banking is very centric to finance, all right? So in terms of the work you're doing, investment banking will be very finance oriented. Consulting you'll get different kind of flavors, right? And consulting, I would say, is a little more generalist compared to an investment banking role. Talking about the work-life balance, I think both of them are equally very have very high working hours for both of them. So in that sense, I think it's the same. In terms of the final part was exposure and growth, right? So I think consulting has better exit options, especially in India, because in India, investment banking is usually a back-end role, right? You won't get a front-end client-facing investment banking role. So it's not as good as, let's say, an investment banking role in the US, right? So I would say consulting has better exit options and it has a better growth trajectory compared to investment banking. But that being said, investment banking is also a great place to start off your career. So yeah, that's a bit about consulting versus investment banking.
Thank you. We have the next question for Manasvi. How did you all come up with the case group? In your perspective, are seniors willing to sit with juniors and practice cases?
Right. So coming up with case group, trust me, it's like a very hard process because you have to find the exact match for you. And it's okay if you are not like, if it doesn't work out for you and you want to change case groups, it's okay. And the best part is you need to be like fully transparent with the other person. Let them know like, hey, this isn't working out for me. The timings are off or whatever the reason is, and then switch your group. You're going to have to do multiple iterations and find out your perfect fit. As far as seniors are considered, again, individual experience, but personally, I've had amazing experience with my seniors. I would reach out to, people I know from 18 batch, from my club seniors, everywhere. I would like just reach out, drop them a message. Hey, are you free for a case? I got shortlisted for BCG. I wanted your help. Can you help me out? And I have so far had like a great experience. And honestly speaking, if anyone wants to prep with me, I would be available. Just drop me a text, drop me a mail, and I'll be available for case prepping. And yeah, that's pretty much it about your case group. Just make sure that you do have a case group because it does get stressful and does get lonely at times. So you'd want a set of people to like call up at 2 a.m. and cry, I'm very stressed out, nahi ho raha hai, ye nahi ho raha hai. So yeah.
Honestly, you just made a mistake by telling them that you can reach out anytime. Huh? Now you're gonna do like 5 cases a day. But yeah, anyways, guys, when you're reaching out to seniors now, what helped in my case was just trying to find some commonality, right? So let's say you were in the same club, same department. First, reach out to those seniors, right? Because those people know you. They have some commonality with you. So try to reach out to those people, then obviously reach out to Bitsians. And yeah, that's how it usually goes. Seniors are always helpful, dude. Like everyone's received help from their seniors and they also help their juniors. So don't worry about that.
Yeah, good to know. So the next question is, are there any clubs or departments that which stand out in the resume and companies prefer?
Good question. I think, see, there are some Bitsians as well who will be involved in the process of recruitment, right? So they will also be looking at your resume. So yes, some clubs may stand out compared to others. Some departments may stand out compared to other PORs. For example, something like a senator or like president of SU is like excellent, right? It's a very good POR and it takes up a lot of your time, right? So something like that is an excellent POR compared to, let's say, being a part of a club, right? So again, it genuinely depends on how you portray it, all right? How you show the kind of work that you're doing. If it's seen that, you know, ye thoda light sa lag raha hai and it's not a very important club, then they'll also know ki, he's not spending his time, he or she is not spending his time properly. But if they see it's something like senator and you've explained it properly, like you've done so and so and so and you've done so and so and so, then they'll understand that a lot of time and effort goes into this, right? So and again, like I said, there are some Bitsians who are also looking into it. So yes, there are some clubs and departments that would probably be, some PORs that would probably be better than others. But again, it depends on how well you portray it in your resume, right? So whatever you have, portray it as strongly as you can.
Great. So they have also asked, how did both of you personally figure out that you want to devote your time and energy into consulting, and what stage of life or what year of college were you in that you figured it out?
Manasvi, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So honestly, you don't like just select consulting. Like that's what it has been for me and people around me, that no one selected consulting and were like, that's the only thing I'm going to do. From what I know, everyone around me, including me, has tried out every single thing. I tried out, you know, I had a finance minors. I was like, okay, I want to get into finance maybe. Then I also wanted to do product management. Since January, I had been doing a lot of product management prep, like prepping for those interviews, looking for those interns. My current internship is also slightly strategy based, but it's more like a business role wherein I end up doing a lot of product related work. And as like that is what I did over the years. I explored every single thing. And as far as after the shortlist is concerned, of course, after you get the shortlist, I knew for a fact that, you know, if I'm going to sit for BCG or Bain or whatever once, this is probably like a once in a lifetime chance that I'm getting, and I'm not going to interview again with them. So of course, like beyond the shortlist, there was like no question. It was stressful, it was hectic, but I tried to give it my best. I am sure people would have given it more, some people would have given it less, but I tried to give whatever the best I could. So I was also interning at that point of time. And so I would like try to find time in the morning, maybe wake up early, read a few cases at that point of time because I didn't have people to prep with. Try to look at a few videos, you know, read a few cases here and there. In the evening, I try to schedule cases, weekends also. So at that point of time, you have to give it all of it, like everything that you have, because then the regret would be there with me. So that is like what my mindset was. That is how I decided ki kitna time dena hai, ki if beyond this I, you know, miss out, no regrets because I gave it all of it. And I think that is how you decide your time after the shortlist.
Yeah, my story is also kind of similar to Manasvi. But when I first found out about consulting, I remember I was in second year, and in my cricket team, one of my seniors had got into McKinsey, and he told me about this consulting, and he's like, I make a shit ton of money, and I'm like, fuck yes, this looks interesting. So, but yeah, naturally, I heard about consulting in my second year, and it seemed interesting to me. Just like what Manasvi said, you know, I tried out different things, right? I looked at consulting. I joined 180DC on campus. I explored venture capital. I explored finance. I explored core engineering, right? Core mechanical engineering. And I sort of figured out where my main interest lies. And I really liked consulting, right? That sort of in that industry sort of stood out to me for various reasons that were already mentioned on this PPT, right? And decided part of 180 DCO, you need to do something related to consulting. That's the beauty. You don't. All right. You can experiment and do whatever you want. All right. You can do 3 internships in all core engineering or all in IT, or you can do 3 varied internships, one in VC, one in finance, one in I don't know, core. Whatever you want to do, you can do. All right. That's the beauty about consulting. You can experiment with whatever you want. All right. And that still adds to your resume, right? What consulting firms are expecting of you is just that no matter what you do, you excel at it. Okay? No matter what you pick up, it doesn't matter which industry or whatever thing you do, you excel at it. And that's sort of exactly what we do actually in consulting, right? We end up in some random industry for which we have probably no idea, but we learn about that industry and we develop insights about that industry, right? So that's the whole point of it. So that's what I liked about consulting. I could experiment with other things and sort of see if I have any other interests. And at the same time, I was building my resume for consulting, right? And yeah, so while, yes, my main aim was consulting, I did want to have backups as well, which is why I sort of diversified my resume as well. I do have some core engineering internships and all, and my profile there is strong. I also did I also did a finance minor and internships in finance. So there also I had a decent resume as well, right? So in case consulting didn't work out, God forbid it did work out, then I did have backups, right? But yeah, that was when I sort of second year and third year beginning was sort of when I realized consulting is good.
That's great. Okay, so do consulting companies discriminate between branches, or are there any criteria on which branch students can apply for that particular placement? Or
good question. No. The broad answer is no. There is no discrimination on which branch you're from. All right. Again, like I said, all they care about is if you have excelled at whatever you do. All right. That being said, I have heard of instances where people have said that consulting firms don't prefer IT people, right? People who have done a lot of internships in IT. Second, I've heard people saying consulting firms don't prefer people who have done a lot of research internships, right, with different universities. These are 2 myths that I've heard at least, but I can guarantee you that's not the case. All right. I know seniors who have done a lot of research. Hari Raghavendran, my own batchie, for example, was a full research guy. All right. He's done a shit ton of research and he got in. Seniors, Sanskriti and Prithvi, both of them were strong IT profiles, right? Very, very strong IT profiles. Both of them made it into McKinsey and BCG, right? So there is no bias like that.
yeah. So is the captain of the sports team considered as a peak in the resume?
Again, good question. So see, this is where your judgment comes in, right? What you want to put where. So in my case, my PORs were 180 DC, cost and of spawns, and my third was finance committee, right? My cricket captaincy I included in my extracurriculars, right? So that was a choice I made, right? I have seen resumes where people have put their sports or their music or their dance PORs in PORs itself, and that is completely fine, right? It is a very good POR as well, as long as you can show that you have developed some kind of impact, right? अगर तू कैप्टन बना क्रिकेट टीम का और वो टीम हार गया, they've been losing ever since you became captain, then it's probably not a good POR, right? So yeah, it just depends on how you depict it and how well you show it.
Cool. Could you guys rank CG internships and extracurriculars in terms of importance from the perspective of the companies?
Manasvi, you want to take it?
Sure. Right. So, since none of us have been on the other side, we can't answer certainly. But as we mentioned earlier as well, there is a huge diversity. People with lesser CG have also had amazing internships. People with amazing CG also did not have a lot in their intern section. So I don't think, from my understanding, there isn't an order of the peaks. It's just that how well you're highlighting it, how well you've done in the field that you picked, and whatever your personal choice is, I think that's what is followed.
Cool. We have another question. As only IT roles are offered in SI, where and how should we try to grab a consulting summer intern?
This is a note to PU. You should get more consulting internships. Achha, but anyways, just joking. Yeah, so you have to understand at the end of the day, we are an engineering college, right? So engineering companies ही आएंगे summer internships में. So good news is many of MBB are looking to come to BITS for internships. Hopefully it will come in the next 1 or 2 years, hopefully. No guarantees, but hopefully. But in case right now, what you can do is you can start looking at those tier 2 and other global consulting firms I've mentioned previously in the deck, right? I can actually go to that slide right now. Yeah, so you should be looking at that second and third level, right? Kearney, Oliver Wyman, LEK, Dalberg, and the Big Four. So these are excellent places to intern with. And the easiest way to get in through these firms is through a referral, all right? If you know somebody in this firm, definitely reach out to them. If you don't know anybody, try to network, all right? You have to use LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, trust me, it's the most underrated tool on the planet, all right? Use LinkedIn, network with individuals from these firms. Try reaching out to partners, right? Try mailing partners from these firms as well. Never know what may happen. And try asking for a referral. And if you do get one, then that's great, right? You'll get through. Taking Pranaydeep's example specifically, that guy, like I said, he interned with Alvarez and Marshall, Kearney, Everstone Group, INSEAD, all of those things. So that guy was a master of cold calling and cold mailing, right? So he was relentless. He'd reach out to people on LinkedIn, he'd reach out to people via email, and it would work, right? So that's what you have to do. You have to be a little relentless, since it's not on campus, since you're going off campus. You need to put in the work, all right? Try to network with individuals from these firms and try to look for a referral that way. That would be the best bet, I would say, right now for you guys.
Okay, thank you so much for answering our questions. The talk was really great, and these are all the questions that we can take today. Thank you so much for your time, and I really hope that our audience enjoyed our talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Feel free to reach out to us for any questions, like I said. And if you want to do any mock cases, do it with Manasvi. She has a lot of time on her hand for the next 1 year. So feel free to call her. Yeah. Feel free to call me.
Right.
Also. But yeah. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. I'll be on campus next semester anyway, so you can text me or anything.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you so much.